CPS is considering bringing back in-person driver's ed. I'll tell you how students could get credit for going behind the wheel.
And the food bank is trying to bulk up for back to school. This is KOMU 8 News at 6.
The world watches on as the war between Israel and Hamas claims more and more lives. Plus, the dispute over marijuana sales taxes in Missouri takes another turn.
And the Citizens Police Review Board has criteria for Columbia's next police chief. This is KMU 8 News at 9.
By this time tomorrow, the U.S. may have a new Speaker of the House. We'll have the latest on the search for a new leader. Having trouble quitting smoking? Some researchers at MU may soon have a way to help. We'll tell you more after the break.
All right, well, coming up, why one Missouri town thinks its visitors might be out of this world. And you'll learn how some Missourians are helping battle the blaze in Hawaii.
Coming up, the man rescued from a cave in Turkey is speaking out. Find out his story of survival and his future plans for caving. Plus, the Girl Scouts do not prepare you for what one troop saw on a swim in Texas. You'll hear their story next.
Well, it could be easier for people in Columbia to get rid of their trash downtown. How we'll tell you after the break. And DC is still reeling from the historic ousting of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. We'll tell you about some of the possible candidates for the position. Landmarks around the world have been lit up in blue and white to show support for Israel. And the state capitol building in Jefferson City is the latest to follow. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe, who is currently acting as governor while Governor Parson is in Japan, and he says the dome of the Capitol building will be lit up until sundown on Sunday. Good evening, I'm Shay Lawson. Thank you for joining us. Well, there has been show of support for Israel. People have not shied away from showing support for Palestine. Pro-Palestine protesters gathered at Times Square in New York City today. This protest was one of many happening around the world as Israel prepares to move ground forces into Gaza. Some political leaders have denounced the protests as anti-Semitic, but the pro-Palestinian protesters say that their message is not one of hate.
We live in New York City. I live in New York City. There are at least a couple of million Jewish people here. I don't view them as my enemies or as Israel or as that. You can't look at it this way. Otherwise, people will be just killing each other everywhere.
Among the protesters were students from Baruch College who marched to Times Square to join the demonstration. President Joe Biden took a moment to address the situation in Israel today in Philadelphia. He emphasized his support for the people of Israel and also recognized the need for humanitarian efforts for Palestinians impacted due to Hamas's attacks.
As I said from the beginning, the United States, make no mistake about it, stands with Israel. At my direction, our teams are working in the region, including communicating directly with the governments of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations and the United Nations to surge support and humanitarian consequences for Hamas attack to help Israel.
Biden says he has spoken to the families of Americans still missing in Israel, and his administration is working to get all of them home. A U.S. military plane delivered aid and security assistance to the Israeli Defense Forces today.
You don't really say it, but to be struck by a bullet is not the easiest way to end your life. You know, I mean, just boom, you don't get to say anything anymore.
The mother of an 11-year-old girl who was killed by celebratory gunfire in Kansas City on July 4th, 2011, looks back upon her efforts to toughen up certain gun laws. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Kading. Thank you so much for joining us. Blair Shanahan Lane was killed by a stray bullet while celebrating the 4th of July in her backyard back in 2011. She was only 11 years old. But since then, her mother has worked to get a new law passed that makes charges for recklessly discharging a firearm more severe. Her efforts finally paid off. KOMU8's John Murphy spoke with her mom today about the first 4th of July since Blair's law was passed. Two were injured in a shooting as the Denver Nuggets celebrated their NBA title with a parade yesterday. Officials say both are in serious condition. The suspect is still at large, though police are confident they will be able to apprehend him. Denver police believe it was a targeted attack, and this marks the second shooting in Denver this week after 10 were shot on Monday following Denver's championship-clinching win over the Heat.
These are young people who are 19 and 22 and 25 whose lives, if they're not ended by the gunshot, they are ruined and ended because they're going to spend the rest of their lives in jail.
Also at that parade, a Denver police officer is at risk of losing his leg after being hit by a fire truck. The officer was walking alongside the truck, which was carrying members of the Nuggets team throughout the streets of Denver. Denver's police chief says he was working to keep fans safely out of the path of the truck when he was hit. A witness describes that awful scene.
His legs were completely under the front wheel, and they started banging on the truck to back it up. The driver didn't understand what was going on. He kind of kept going forward, and I mean, the SWAT officer was stuck under the truck for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds probably.
Medical officials said they could not yet determine whether the officer's leg could be saved.
Project for I-70 in Missouri drew a lot of attention tonight from community members. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tia Maggio. Thanks so much for joining us. KMU's Grant Green went to an informational meeting where people got to hear about the plans firsthand. Grant.
Tia, the $2.8 billion project will add a third lane from Blue Springs to Wentzville. More than 120 people came to Battle High School tonight to share their thoughts and concerns about the plan. The first part of the expansion is starting right here on a 20-mile stretch from Columbia to Kansas City. I talked with the MoDOT Improvement I-70 director, who tells me the next steps of construction will happen pretty soon.
So we will be working with our contractors. We're confident that industry's ready to go with this first project, but we plan to award a contract of $400 million February of next year.
MoDOT is hoping to have the first of 7 parts of the project completed by late 2027. In the studio, Grant Green, KOM8 News.
All right, thanks, Grant. Speaking of I-70, the Rocheport Bridge is coming down at 7:30 a.m. this Sunday, as more than 1,000 pounds of truss and 6 million pounds of steel will be dropped into the Missouri River. During the blast, the Missouri State Highway Patrol will restrict traffic on both sides of the bridge between exits 111 and 117. Parts of the Katy Trail will also be closed in order to keep people safe. The process could take up to an hour as the Missouri Department of Transportation will clear the roadway and new bridge of debris.
Vehicles with lights out there in front of traffic, slowing them down, will clear the traffic in between the bridge and those vehicles and those emergency vehicles, the Highway Patrol and London vehicles, or the contractor vehicles, to make sure that there's no traffic in between them and the bridge, east and westbound.
Those interested in watching the blast can find the live stream on KOMU.com Sunday morning. While one mid-Missouri bridge is coming down, another is now open for business. The Bonfim Creek Bridge in Boone County was closed for repairs originally on April 10th. When construction began on the new bridge, crews found a void connected to the Devil's Icebox system. That forced construction delays. Those delays affected businesses like Creekside Pet Center and Strawberry Hill Farms. They were disconnected from Columbia for all these months. The businesses took to social media to celebrate the completion of the bridge. A storm last night left some damage in Eldon. This video from Jeff Daniels and Chell Haynes shows some downed trees in front of their house. The storm came through Eldon around 9. And our First Alert weather team was tracking those storms. Chief Meteorologist Matt Beckwith is here with us now. And Matt, are we going to see any more storms this week?
We are less than 24 hours from another Mizzou kickoff as the Tigers take on the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders tomorrow night. Good evening, I'm Michelle Renee Quinn. Thanks for joining us. Here with me is First Alert weathercaster Emmy Chirpik. Emmy, how comfortable will it be out at Farrow Field?
Well, honestly, it's kind of going to be a lot like today. It's going to be a mild weekend for us, and you'll probably think that it's starting to feel a little bit more like fall.